Folks, today we are talking sports betting. I'm gonna tell you why athletes simply should not be able to bet on any sport whatsoever. I've got a good reason behind why, and I'm gonna also tell you why these sports leagues can't have it both ways. They can't be in bed with every one of these sports books.
During games, promotions for sports books like FanDuel and DraftKings are everywhere.
Networks creating things like ESPN Bet.
Leagues have cashed in. Networks too.
Man, I gotta teach you how to gamble.
For decades, odds and point spreads were forbidden topics. Now, ESPN has its own sportsbook.
Called it, baby.
And plaster it everywhere without consequences that you've already seen with players like Jontay and the likes of some NFL players throughout the league. So I'm gonna break it all down. Appreciate you stopping by. Hit the subscribe button. We are hopping right into it. There is seriously no world where the current betting rules and regulations are going to work for the long term. And I encourage these sports leagues to tighten things up sooner than later, because it does feel like the worst is yet to come. It is only a matter of time before you have a top 10 or top 5 player in one of these leagues get busted for betting. And so here is my proposal. Do not allow athletes in any of the major sports leagues to bet at all. Not just they can't bet on their sport or they can't bet at the NFL facility. You must say that sports gambling is entirely off the table. Now, for those of you who have an issue with the idea that an athlete will be held to a different standard than the general public, I've got two things to say to you. First, athletes get treated differently in almost every facet of society, the same as celebrities. And so they can get treated differently here too. The stakes are simply too high. And secondly, they don't need the money. The purpose of betting is obviously to bring in more cash. And they have disposable and disproportionate access to money that their average Joe does not.
Americans have spent more than $250 billion sports betting.
You must stigmatize betting and make it shameful enough that they wouldn't even think of opening that door. People are going to have problems inevitably with things that are addictive.
Years have given rise to a surge in young gambling addicts. Joe Rosillo, now 26, says his problem started in high school. Then in 2022, sports betting apps came to his home state of New York.
What impact did that have?
It had a big impact.
Were you interested in the game itself?
I am a sports fan, but as the years grew on, you become less interested in the game itself and more interested in the result.
And who needs a bookie when a fresh bet is just a swipe away?
And it's time for leagues, as well as the public, to realize they need to set players up for success by unblurring those lines, leaving no room for ambiguity, and do more than just simply stick a number on the end of every podcast ad or at the bottom of your sportsbook app saying, call 1-800-GAMBLER. That is not a sufficient solution. These policies don't feel very well thought out, and when they instituted these changes, they certainly weren't thinking of the unintended consequences that would come down the line. Essentially, what happened with the NFL is, after decades of making gambling one of the most taboo topics in the sport, they got into bed with the Las Vegas Raiders relocation and understood that that decision implicitly distanced themselves from the strong anti-betting position that they had for all of those years.
The Super Bowl will, for the first time, be held in Las Vegas, a fitting venue given the prominent role gambling plays in sports today. America has recently brought its age-old love of sports betting out of the shadows and onto our phones. Gamblers, overwhelmingly young men, versus gambling companies armed with sophisticated AI, data, and engineering, enticing fans to make snap bets not just on games, but on every play within games. The early results: billions for gambling companies, leagues, and state governments, and a growing population of sports bettors struggling to defend against the rush.
And so, in response, what they did was continue to get into bed with these casinos and these sports books and create more contradictions that honestly make very little sense, right? An example that comes to mind is the fact that they have a very strong and rigid anti-alcohol policy, but in every other commercial on your screen on Sunday, there's a beer ad or a tequila poster in the stadiums across all of the country. When you do these things and you plaster it everywhere where an athlete frequents, you tap on that competitive part of the athlete that makes them great. Not only do they have this unbelievable belief in themselves that they know more about the sport than you or I, but they also have a much higher likelihood of knowing other people in sports leagues and having insider information on their team, on their league, or cross leagues altogether. You simply can't send the message that we're not okay with this thing, but look over here at all the shiny ads that tells you that we're the biggest advocate in the world for it as long as it lines our pockets. Athletes are likely going to say, what's so bad? What's the worst that could happen? But if there's no door that you can enter, then it simply shuts off that urge. I'm not gonna bet on the NBA tonight as an NFL player because I simply, number one, don't need to financially. And if I do lose some money in that, I'm not gonna run to the NFL about the league that I know the best and try to double my money, make the money I lost back in basketball.
I'm good for it. I'm up for the stick wolf thing. If I get on staff, it's like a month's salary. Hey, you think you could spot me for a while? I got some child support too. You're charging me, Vig?
Don't give me that look. This is your problem. I will not fucking enable you.
It's the combination of all of these factors that worry me and the lack of punishment that we really see from these leagues. The NBA is always going to have a stronger reaction to any rule breakage than the NFL. NFL doesn't ban players for life, and they truly are my biggest concern in all of this. You don't want to set yourself up for a recipe where a guy is getting his knees caved in with a baseball bat and then has to go turn around and play a game in Philadelphia on Sunday Night Football.
This is fucking Pulp Fiction. Am I supposed to be afraid? You know me. What could you possibly do to me that I haven't already been through?
I'm positive we'll think of something.
Athletes have enough things that they can go broke on. They already are a pretty high risk group of people in terms of overspending and irresponsibly using their disposable income. I just think it's a group that's at risk. And I'm curious to hear your opinions in the comments. I will see you next time.